Hello BookTube, it's Becky from Becky Writes. This is Becky Reads and it's time for my February wrap-up video. February was not my best reading month. In fact, I think it is my slowest reading month since I started BookTube, and that just, that has to be okay with me. I only got through about 6 books this month, which is about half of my average. I know for some people 6 books is great and that is what they aim for, and that's awesome. I just tend to read a lot more than that, and I have been kind of in a reading slump, and then I've been writing, which has perpetuated the reading slump. It's just been complicated. The other thing about this month is that all of them were books that I read as audiobooks, at least in part. So the first book that I finished in the month of February was His Majesty's Dragon, or Temeraire, by Naomi Novik. It's called His Majesty's Dragon in the United States, but I think it's Temeraire in the UK and other parts of the world. This is the first in the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik, and basically it's the Napoleonic Wars, except you have dragons that are a part of the Air Corps. It's like their air force is made up of dragons, and they have this whole culture around dragons who can talk and how you sort of hatch them and you become a pilot. And so it's really the story of a sea captain and the dragon that he basically trains, and their friendship and how they begin to participate in the aviators, the Air Corps, and help out with the war. Now, I was a little bit skeptical when I started this because it's a much slower book. It's very subtle. It's very much about the characters, and it isn't super plot heavy, at least in this first book, but it grew on me. It's kind of a sleeper book. I wouldn't say this is the most fantastic book I've ever read, but I really enjoyed it, and I gave Temeraire 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read a hilarious memoir by the wonderful Kendrick called Scrappy Little Nobody. She reads this audiobook herself, and it was just a delight. Now, again, like many of the memoirs I've read, I wouldn't say I'm a huge Kendrick fan. Like, I've never seen Pitch Perfect. I know, put down your pitchforks. I have seen The Last 5 Years, and I have seen her interviewed a bunch of times. I've seen Into the Woods. I really enjoyed this. Whether or not you know everything about her and you've seen her in tons of shows, she's just funny. Now, I will say it does handle some adult content, particularly around sex and a little bit of casual drug use, so you should just know that going in case, that might be something you're like, oh, we could listen to this in the car with our kids. No. This is definitely PG-13. I thought it was funny. I thought her insights were great. She's got a great voice. She's awkward and weird, and I like awkward, weird people. And I don't know, she's somebody that I'd want to drink a glass of wine with and laugh about how life has turned out. And I also gave Scrappy Little Nobody 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The World According to Star Wars by Sunstein, and I wanted to love this. I really enjoy Star Wars. I'm not somebody who has all the facts memorized, I don't have all the collector's books, I didn't read the novelizations, but I love the films, I really enjoy them, and I thought, oh, this will be a really fun look at the influence of Star Wars on popular culture since the 70s. I'm here for that. Looks great. You guys, this was not what that was. I don't really know what this book was trying to do. Sunstein is a constitutional law professor. I did not know that when I started the book, but it is very clear that he is trying to talk about the way that Star Wars is influenced by and influences politics and social in-groups, and then he has this whole chapter of whacked out theories for what Star Wars means, and it is such a mess. This book is such a mess. It's scattered and it doesn't have any flow, and there are parts of it where I was like, this is interesting. He talks about social cascades and how movements get started because of cascades, so he kind of compares the Star Wars phenomena of the 70s and how it kind of wasn't what everyone expected. No one believed it was going to be a huge hit, but then it was because of in-groups and social cascades, to the same thing happening with the Arab Spring, and that could have been interesting if that was the thrust of the book, but it wasn't. I didn't enjoy it at all, and I really enjoy Star Wars. I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. It was just a mess. Then I read A Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde to fulfill my TBR jar challenge to read a classic, and you guys, I didn't love this. I mean, I know that this is a classic, and I can totally get why. I can get on an intellectual level why people really love this story. I mean, it really is kind of a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale against self-indulgence. It's a fairy tale against believing that beauty and youth are the most important factors in someone's life. It's kind of a Faustus sort of setup, and I get why that's important. I just didn't think it was fantastic. Like, I didn't read it and feel like something had changed. I guess maybe because I didn't read it when I was studying British literature in my early 20s, when I was doing my degree, that I have built it up and built it up and built it up, and now that I've read it, and after having read hundreds of books, I just didn't think it was as fabulous. And maybe it was fabulous for the time, and I think if I had been in a class where we were talking about all the different layers, maybe I would have gotten more out of it, but I just felt like it was really underwhelming, especially since A Picture of Dorian Gray is something that has been hyped to me since high school as this really fascinating sort of creepy gothic story. I guess I can say I appreciated how it explored the darker sides of human nature, because it certainly does. And you have this impressionable, passionate young man who chooses to follow somebody who's completely dispassionate, right? Like a very Satan in the Garden of Eden-like figure. Like, I got that, but I just didn't like the reading process. I just didn't think it was fantastic. I thought it was really, I don't know, maudlin. So I ended up giving The Picture of Dorian Gray 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. This is the first in the series of Unfortunate Events books. This was at my library, so I definitely checked it out, and I enjoyed it. This was a full cast reading of the book, and I actually think that was detrimental to the story, in my opinion. I just think it took away from the story. Can totally see where a middle grader would love this book. I get why these were really popular, but again, I think I'm just too old to really appreciate it. One of the things that Lemony Snicket as a narrator does is constantly define words, and if I were like 11 and I was just learning words, I would think that's pretty cool. But at 31, where I'm like, I have known these words for 20 years, I am not as impressed. So I can't say that I loved it. And also, I was reading about the series. There are 13 books, and I just am not sure I'm gonna continue. That's a huge amount of investment, and I didn't love it, but I didn't dislike it. And I've heard from people who've read the series that, like, it doesn't have a strong conclusion. Like, I've heard that there's no resolution to the story, and after 13 books, that would really make me angry, so I kind of think I might not put my energy into that. I didn't dislike it, I just didn't love it either. So I gave The Bad Beginning 3 out of 5 stars. And finally, I ended the month with the only book that I listened to and kind of read some of, and that was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I finally got around to Fangirl, you guys. I've been saying I was going to read it for a year. And this surprised me. This, probably more than any book I've read in a long time, is a book that I went into it being like, I don't know if I'm going to like it. That's okay. I'm trying to read books on my shelves. I'm going to see how I feel about it. And you guys, I loved this. I loved this so much. It surprised me how much I loved this. I totally resonated with Kath and her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her sister, her awkwardness with Levi, this weird thing about having a community online and having a harder time making like real life friends. I get that. I work with college students, so I see how hard it is for some people to adjust because, you know, they're just different. They are interested in different things than the average college situation. I've also seen and experienced a lot of the things that Rin goes through with thinking that everybody drinks, and so that just has to be how your life is. I appreciated how real this story was. I felt in so many ways that, especially for Kath and Ren, they were depicting very real, accurate experiences of college. Experiences that I've had personally, and experiences that, as someone who works with college students, I see play out. I did think that some of Kath and her roommate situation was a little odd. Not that that dynamic doesn't play out, but like first year students, like freshmen, are never housed with upperclassmen because you don't house someone who's underage with someone that's overage if you can avoid it. That to me is unrealistic, even at a giant state school. But I did really enjoy Levi. I enjoyed that it was a long kind of months and months and months of them getting to know each other before she would say yes, and then even after they started dating, her hesitations. I mean, I think that's real. I think that that's a very accurate portrayal of young relationships and even mature relationships, because you have to learn to trust somebody, and intimacy is hard, and I think that this portrays some of that. Now, I will say I also enjoyed the fangirl snippets, like the fan fiction she was writing, but that was actually way less important to me than the main story. I resonated with that because fan fiction was huge. Harry Potter fan fiction particularly was huge when I was in high school. I did not read or write much of it, but I knew of it in the world, and like Draco, Harry, Slash was so popular among a lot of my friends. Like, oh my goodness. This was great, and if you are hesitating because you don't read contemporaries and you don't like cheesy, I think that this is a solid contemporary that is able to walk the line between being, you know, warm and kind of cozy in some ways, but also being real. There are very real issues that the characters deal with, and I appreciated that. I think they were handled very well. So I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. Rainbow Rowell, you surprised me, because I'm not a contemporary person, but I liked this one. And that's it, you guys. Those are my 6. Most of them were audiobooks, so this is the only one I can show you in my like books I read this month. Just Fangirl. Comment down below and let me know what your favorite book of the month was. Mine was Fangirl. Surprise! I mean, it surprised me too. I wasn't sure I was even gonna like it. I was ready to DNF it if I needed to, but I didn't. I read it in a day. I loved it. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!